Okay. Good morning again, and thank you everyone for joining us. Those who have not been here previously or do not know, I'm Sarah Hunn, Director for DuPage County Stormwater Management, and I want to welcome all of you to our second Spring Pollution Prevention Workshop for 2021. We're excited to be able to do this for our communities to help everyone not only achieve EPA compliance that's required, but also to make a stronger region as far as water quality. Again, as always, we have everyone muted. And so if you have a question during the presentation, please use the chat box. And after each presentation, we'll go through and answer all of those questions. At the end of the seminar, we'll do a quick wrap up and then remind everyone that there are PDHs that will be given out after this. And also, all of the presentations will be available to all of the participants, either to view at a later date, come back to, share, or do whatever you want with them. Again, my name is Sarah Hunn, and I'm going to start again welcoming back Pat Sauer. Pat's the Executive Director of the Iowa Stormwater Education Partnership. She oversees the Education Resource Program and supports Iowa's MS4 regulated cities. This week, Pat is going to talk to us about, better make sure I have the right one up. Pat's going to talk to us about landscape waste and handling. If you recall, last week she talked to us about spill prevention, but this week we're going to talk about handling landscape waste. And so I'm excited for Pat's energy and what she's going to bring to us, as I learned a ton from her last week. And so without that, thank you, Pat.
Okay, thank you very much. And actually, this time around, I am talking about spill prevention and response. No worries, no worries. We will try to make it exciting. So, okay, let me just share my screen here. Go full screen. All right, and if someone could just let me know, is everything okay? You see my screen and you're hearing me just fine. Okay, awesome. We will get started. So the focus is on spill prevention and response. And I'm sure most of you have heard this information before. So I'm just going to give you a broad overview, and I think it's an awesome idea to just continually be reminded on this important topic. A little bit about our organization. So we are a nonprofit, 501c3, have been in existence for 15 years. We support Iowa's MS4s, and I did add, based on questions last time, at the end, I did add a map of the state of Iowa showing where the MS4s are located. So we provide technical assistance. We create educational toolkits for cities to use in their communities to kind of have a uniform message across the state of Iowa, do a lot of training. And so essentially our goal is we're trying to protect and improve local water quality in the state of Iowa. All right, topics. Why care? Spills happen. Materials and waste inventory, spill prevention and response. Little reminder, and it's awesome. I pulled these. I didn't take these photos personally. I'm citing, but these are, it looks like you have beautiful water resources in DuPage County. And so our goal here with all of this is to raise the awareness to protect and improve local water quality. So kids can wade in the water. Adults can play in the water as well, and kayak and fish and all of those wonderful things. Spills happen. This actually happened to be in DuPage County. So, it's something we want to be prepared for. We want to try and prevent if we can, but things do happen as well. And so I was able to go to the Illinois Emergency Management Agency and in the county, and I'm not sure where time starts on this, but there are records for 3,800 reported spills in the county itself. So things happen. So let's be prepared, know what to do. And how do we be prepared? It starts with, what do we have? So doing that materials inventory, which I touched on the last time, knowing, what do you have? What is dangerous to humans? What is hazardous? What's the best way to store it and handle it? And where is this information? If a spill were to occur, where do we find this information to know what are we dealing with? What's the best way to clean up, contain and clean up this waste material or this spill material? So there are spill reporting requirements for the state of Illinois, and yes, they do differ from Iowa. So I did confirm this with some of the training team. So you have seen this guidance before. I think it's important to be aware of it. And so you have specific reporting requirements. I'm not going to go into full details, but you are required to report to your emergency management representative if anyone is killed, if there are injuries, if there are fires, et cetera, explosions. But also there is specific guidance on related to petroleum products, and looking at an amount if it exceeds 25 gallons and such. So that is information to be aware of. What are your reporting requirements if a spill does occur? Okay, so let's get into specifics on spill prevention. Know what you have, educate and remind, be prepared with plans. So staff education, you're doing it right now. Best thing that you can possibly do. Constantly remind people. Record and share information. You're recording these webinars today. For those that can't make it, share the information, get it out there. Reminders, reminders, reminders. And then consider website information. So here's something that we use with some of our MS4s or some groups that we've worked with that have asked us to put pollution prevention information together. Have that poster, put it on poster boards, blast it on social media, or if you've got a drive of some sort where you've got a collection of information on spill response. So it's there, and the most important part of it when it comes to stormwaters, people need to know, where does stormwater go on this property? Where are the intakes? And so having this kind of this information where you've got site maps and what are all the potential pollutants, and having this information for each facility is incredibly important. So have a designated website area where you can gather information. People will know who to contact as well. And a lot of this seems very repetitive, but yet important. It just needs to be in front of people's faces, because when you're in crisis or emergency mode, you need something easy to get to and respond to very, very quickly. So I'm just giving you examples for a couple of MS4s that have information on their websites. This is really more for the public. So you as MS4s or staff would need to decide, where would we put our information for spill response? I'm just giving some ideas. Sending out reminders. So this is something that a tagline that we use in Iowa and some of our educational resources, reminding people street to stream, no treatment in between, showing that storm drain. So using social media for reminders or staff emails, to periodically remind people. It's this time of year, we're using more lawnmowers, or we're transferring certain types. If there's certain activities, just sending out reminders, handle this properly. If you have a spill, this is how you respond. And of course, this is an easy one, is having badges on all storm drains. I know that a lot of storm drains now, the newer ones, have stamps on them. Sometimes the stamped metal, it's hard to read the message. Sometimes it's not. But having badges on storm drains is an easy option. I know that you could stencil, but the stencils, over time, I've observed that they just don't last very long. All right, another easy one. You heard me harp on this last time, spill kits. So I think when it comes to spill kits in terms of being prepared, is having a spill kit, making sure that materials are replenished, and having big bold letters, spill kit, and having staff know exactly where that spill kit is located. And so some of the materials that would be in the spill kit, and you can buy pre-prepared spill kits. There are a whole host of companies that have those, or buy the trash can, put a big sticker on it, and then you can order the individual materials. So it would start likely with a storm drain intake cover. There are pads and gels and granules and socks that can be used, gloves, the human safety part of it, gloves, goggles, and then the bags to clean up the waste depending on the form of waste. And then, of course, a reminder to replace used material. So for storm drain covers, again, not promoting any one product over the other. These were readily available photos that were online. So and these can fit easily in a spill kit. It's just having the storm, number one, staff to know where are the storm drains located, having that posted somewhere, and then having covers that can be used to protect these storm drains. Or you could have socks to put around storm drains, etc. Having spill response plans for each facility, making sure that they're easy to read and not having it be this long, huge document that takes a half hour to read and stuck on a shelf in pristine situation. You know, having that laminated poster and having it available so that staff know how to respond. Easy to read. It seems as though a step process makes it easier to understand and follow, and importantly, include the organization contacts, the supervisor contacts, as well as local and state contacts. So a little close up of an example of a spill response plan. We will go into more details for each one of these in a little bit. So just a comment here, these differ somewhat from SPCC plans. And so you would know if you are required to have an SPCC plan. And I pulled up the EPA's template that is available. So I'm just verifying, I'm not going into the details on those plans. Okay, areas susceptible to spills. Any place where there's loading and unloading, transfer points, if there's a supply rotation, bringing old to the front, putting new to the back, you know, we're in any fueling operations, and I'm sure I'm missing some others, but these are like the primary susceptible areas. And so loading, you know, here's an example of a loading and unloading area and storage containers, and we can see that there are leaks that are occurring. I wouldn't call these spills, these are more leaks, and so that will take response, cleanup, and response. So getting a little more detail on the plan, we're going to look at assessing the risk of a spill response plan, notify, stop work, stop the source, clean up and decontaminate, complete post-spill response, and how are we going to prevent this from happening in the future? So a lot of this, you need to think about the scale of the spill. So are we talking about a leaking container that maybe has leaked a quart of material versus do we have an outdoor chemical storage container, as you're seeing in the middle, where we're starting to see a significant leak that has occurred and waste or spill deposition versus on the right, hopefully we're not seeing these kind of spills, but they do periodically. We do have significant oil spills, more in ocean type situations. But you know, what scale are we looking at here and responding according to the nature of the spill? So going through each one of these, assessing the risk. Number one, human safety, the utmost of importance. So making that assessment. Then secondly is the environmental risk. So, you know, then when a spill occurs, you're looking at ventilation, the type of materials, having that SDS information available and knowing what kind of materials are we dealing with here? What is the degree of potential human impact and environmental impact? Wearing protective clothing. And of course, if you're exposed to any of the contaminants, making sure that there are decontamination procedures, the removal of contaminated clothing, and then proper disposal. Of course, when it comes to human safety, if administering first aid is necessary, of course, having first aid materials that are available and on hand and that staff know where that information is located. And for the type of materials, you know, should you be adding, if something is on a hand or a body part, you know, should you be rinsing with water or should you be neutralizing with another material? And then, of course, call the supervisor. Notify and stop risks. So if there's a hazardous condition, of course, contact the supervisor. And then, you know, then of course a chain reaction occurs of there should be a spill response team, you know, is the fire department involved, depending on your organization. And having that spill response plan should include that type of information. And of course, depending on the nature of the spill, making sure you're wearing, if you need hazmat suits and such, but typically your specific spill response team, fire department, has access to that. Most employees would not be at that level of response. You have professionals that are specifically trained if we're looking at a significant spill of hazardous materials. Stop the source of the spill. So you're looking at, are we dealing with a dry chemical spill? Or are we dealing with a wet chemical spill? And so if you're looking at a dry chemical spill, the best thing you can do, and when we're thinking about human health, but we're also thinking about stormwater, cover it with a tarp. You want to prevent airborne distribution, especially if there's wind, and we have wind in Iowa, and I think Chicago area is known as a Chicago windy city, but getting that covered so we're not distributing materials, and of course weighing down that tarp as well. And I'm just focusing on stopping the source. And so then, of course, when you've got wet, it's a little bit different and things move a lot more quickly. So this is where you're pulling out of your spill kit, depending on the level of the spill and quantity of spill, your absorbent pads, your granules, and some of these granule materials, actually, I've noticed one in particular, which we're using for concrete wet saw cutting, is some of these materials are phenomenal. They will expand to 400 times their size and actually can neutralize pH as well. So it's amazing the science behind some of these. You can create a dam using the absorbents or some of the absorbent socks or sandbags to encircle the spill. And then of course, have those storm drain protection, and thinking about drainage ways, maybe bringing in sandbags or having sandbags on hand to divert any flows away from drainage ways that may discharge directly to local water bodies. Clean up and decontaminate. So this is where it depends on the amount of spill, the nature of the spill. So, you may be very simply, if you have a small spill of gasoline or hydraulic fluid or something like that, put an absorbent on, put your gloves on, and then clean up the waste, dispose of it properly. But larger scale, you would be working with guidance from your spill response team, or they essentially would be handling it. And any hazardous materials are going to require that specialized handling. So general guidance, so for dry materials, or if wet materials have been converted to a solid by using some of these granules, you sweep up the materials, dispose of them, contacting your local solid waste facility to find out what their requirements are. Can you just dispose of it in a dumpster? Do you need to take it to a specific facility? Do you need to contain it in a specific manner? And such, of course, depending on the form, is this something you're gonna bring in a vac truck to clean up, or shovel, sweep, and containing the waste? But also be aware, what you don't wanna do is, you have a hazardous substance, is intermingling that with other wastes that are not hazardous. So you've taken a hazardous waste in a small amount, and because of the intermingling of hazardous waste with other wastes, now you have a much larger headache to deal with. So think about those things. And then of course, what did we learn? This is an important part of it, is how can we prevent spills like this from happening in the future? Having this post-event evaluation with staff. How can we improve our response? We know that spills are going to happen. What can we do to improve the response and what we're dealing with? And then, of course, complete a spill response form. And the majority of your facilities should have stormwater pollution prevention plans for each of the different facilities. Update that plan. And I've worked with some groups where I'll ask them, a couple of airports that I've put spill prevention plans together for, I'll say, well, have any spills ever occurred at your facility? And they'll say, no, we've never had any spills. I'm like, okay, let's be honest and realistic, because it looks really suspicious if you say that, or never been any spills. I think your regulatory people are wanting to see, well, what is your response? We know that they happen, and what is your response, and how did you clean them up? I think that's sort of what we're looking at here. And I've talked enough about replenishing your spill kits. So that essentially is what I have for spill prevention and response, that overview, that broad overview with some reminders. Just a couple other things in closing. I wanted to show you, for those that may be curious, this is the distribution of MS4s in the state of Iowa. So we have the 44 cities, which you can see mainly distributed around metropolitan areas. We have a few outliers like the city of Storm Lake and Carter Lake. So we have some smaller communities that are MS4s because they discharge to impaired water bodies. So there are TMDLs for these water bodies, and the state's Department of Natural Resources has included them as MS4s. I would assume in the near future that this number will increase based on the 2020 survey, or the census, excuse me, based on population. So our numbers will increase. We also have the 3 state universities that are included as well. Again, no DOTs and no counties, and that is unique to Iowa for EPA Region 7. And this week I participated in we're also a member of the National Municipal Stormwater Alliance, of which like similar organizations to ours that work with and represent the MS4s within their state. And really a priority, and EPA is focusing on this, and I don't want to, spill prevention and response is really important, but even as simple as garbage and trash is becoming a significant issue, and EPA is recognizing that as well. So just even thinking about our facilities, and I talked about solid waste management, touched on that last week, is how can we prevent pollution from just trash alone? So I will leave you with that comment, and let me go full scale again. And here is my email and our website and contact information. So if there are any questions at all.
Thanks, Pat. We do have a question, and before I go to that question, just anecdotally, right as you started your presentation, we received a spill report from IEMA. So the timing of that was pretty crazy. And so for the question, does Iowa BMP training for spill response include taking photos of the spill and reporting it? Is that a good idea or bad?
I think,
2 questions.
Whoops, I think I'm getting a little, I thought I was getting some feedback. So I think it's a good idea to take photos. Sometimes it's more than photos. Well, photos for documenting the extent, but then also videos are taken too. And it depends on the volume of waste that you're dealing with in some cases, and the human exposure. But I think taking photos is a really good idea. And I know that on the regulatory side, we're not regulators, but I know on the regulatory side, they do take a lot of photos, especially when you look at tracing a spill. If it enters a water body and then you're looking at fish kills, I know that they verify the number of fish. They have professionals that come in and do the counts. But yes, I think it's a good idea to take photos, yes.
Okay, and if I've had a small spill and I use my cleanup materials and taking care of it, do I still need to notify my supervisor? Any advice on that?
Oh, if it's really small, like a few drips, I think it's a good idea to clean it up and take care of it. It probably is a good idea to just let your supervisor know that, hey, this happened, just thought I'd let you know. If it is a recurring type of spill or a recurring type of leak, you definitely want to let your supervisor know, hey, we need to change out this equipment. I'm doing this on a weekly basis. I'm having to clean up and such. So those are things to keep in mind. Yes, good questions.
Okay, and then the final question: what is the best way to address the spill of an unknown source and material from your experience?
Oh, okay. So I don't have frontline experience with spills. So I'm more on the information gathering and sharing, disseminating and sharing. So some of our other speakers might have more experience with that. And see, that's the critical part right there, is knowing what you're dealing with. And that's why having staff that work regularly with those chemicals and that equipment, if you want to call it, they all need to have the knowledge of, okay, I am working with this hazardous waste material, and should there be a leak, should there be a spill, this is how I respond. So that is something that has to be done in-house to protect human health and also protect the environment too. It's just making that connection between what materials you're using, what is hazardous, what is not, how are we supposed to be storing and handling these, and if a spill occurs, how do we respond? So that's the best advice I can come up with.
Outstanding. Yeah, I think that's good advice. And I think we all, at least here locally in DuPage County, have a lot of resources between our local public works departments and chemists, as well as our fire departments.
Right.
And we have some testing opportunities, and sometimes we have to use our local laboratories as well. So thank you, Pat.
Well, and I was going to say one thing too, and I have received a couple of calls from cities that they just don't know, they've never dealt with a spill situation, and it's more related to an illicit discharge, and it may have been a spill or it may have been an intentional discharge, and so they're wondering how to start. You know, I can't tell what this is. It smells like this or that or whatever. So that's where I would engage, you know, you want to collect samples using protective gear or hire a professional, but work with your labs. And most cities and MS4s have access to a lab through a wastewater treatment facility, or they just use different private laboratories as well. They should be able to provide guidance on, okay, if it smells like this, or if it looks like has this sheen or cloudiness or whatever, you know, let's collect these samples and analyze them for that. So that it's a different situation, an illicit discharge versus a spill, but they can be related as well.
Okay, thank you. Lots of good information. And I apologize on that little mess up in the beginning. I've got it straightened out now. So thank you, Pat. And
you're welcome.
Our next presenter, Guy Lamb, is a Deputy Public Works Director from the Village of Wilmette. And he's responsible for the management of buildings, grounds, streets, water, sewers, and maintenance. And when I saw Guy was a presenter today, I was trying to remember where I recalled his name from, just being a bit of a different name. And I think Wilmette is the owner of, is it Blackhawk Road or Blackhawk Street? That's notorious for having its signs stolen during hockey season. And so I think that's where I recall your name from, Guy, prior to our appreciation to you joining us here for this event today. And so Guy is actually going to talk about landscape waste and handling and some of the practices and procedures they do in the Village of Wilmette. And so I will turn it over to you, Guy.
Sounds good. Thank you very much. Let me share my screen here. All right, so for landscape waste handling, specifically this presentation, we're going to talk about the village's leaf collection program. So just a little bit of history. Wilmette, we're signified with that red dot, northern Cook County. This was is basically a map of vegetation dating back to like the mid 1800s. But Wilmette is located in an area that historically is kind of like a forested swamp, I guess is the best way to put it. And then it's coated in with these different colors. Obviously the green is forested. The yellow, lighter colors, those are like prairie areas. So yeah, it's kind of a mixture of a forested area, swamps, sloughs, some wet prairie, that type of stuff. Here's just a paper version of the map. And then it's also got some of these little codes for density of trees per hectare. One thing, I gotta bring this up. So one thing also is we have 17,500 parkway trees, and approximately like 15 years ago, the village, when it rolled out its tree preservation ordinance for public and private property, they hired a firm that did kind of like a aerial photo analysis, and the village at that time had over 40% canopy coverage. So basically, I just wanted to shed some light that we're kind of a community of trees. So leaf collection is, you know, a big deal for us. Back in 2018, we did a survey, and actually we did it earlier in 15 as well. We collect leaves on public and private property, and which is not, you know, that's not unusual. just some other communities that are nearby us. There's actually quite a few others that do that as well. The different things to point out, the collection methods might vary a little bit. We're predominantly kind of a leaf pusher, garbage truck type collection system, where other communities might use more vacuum type of equipment. Also, the way we compute our totals is we use compacted cubic yards, where other communities might use like loose yardage or possibly tonnage, stuff like that. Our compacted yards, if you wanted to convert it roughly to loose, it would be like kind of a 2-to-1 ratio. So we're upwards of probably close to 20,000 loose yards a year that we collect through our program. This is a view entering into our public works facility. Our program would not exist without having a facility where we could, temporarily store, process, and get them hauled away. In 2017, the village had a paving improvement project at our public works yard. So like our whole leaf facility that you see in front of us here, and this was taken during the off season, it was all reconstructed in concrete. And whereas before we kind of had like a facility that we made basically in a house with concrete block, stone, asphalt, which you'll see some photos of that as we go. Here's another view of the new facility. It's also got a push wall, a structural push wall that helps out a lot. And then along the right-hand side, there was a curb installed, which we didn't have that before. And that what you see here on the ramp is on the left-hand side. Those are leaf pans, which get affixed to the back of garbage trucks to collect the leaves. And then also you see quite a few leaf pushers, which are leaf brooms, we call them. They're modified plows that mount to the front of pickup trucks. And also what you see here is this is taken during the off season. We have some wood debris, wood waste there. That's just from in-house operations. A lot of our stuff is contracted out, so we don't process logs or bulk of the debris from routine operations. The contractor handles that. But we do some stuff in-house, service requests, brush clearing and clearance pruning, stuff like that. The park district repurposes a lot of that in the parks. And then if we have excess debris, we'll work with a hauler. We work with a vendor that's a licensed compost facility that processes, they're a commercial processor of mulch products, and they repurpose it. So here's kind of an overhead shot of our yard. We are right off the Edens Expressway at Lake Avenue. Loyola Academy, if you know where that is just north of us. But you come down, the trucks will come in south on Laramie, enter into the yard. That's kind of the blue boxes as the semi trucks, the leaf ramps in the red outline. Leaves are deposited where the yellow X's are, and then the green arrow kind of just signifies where the wheel loaders will go up the ramp and load the semis, and then off the semis go. So we have a permit through the IEPA for our site, our public works facility, for to serve as a temporary transfer facility for processing landscape waste. It was first issued back in '98, and then we had it modified in 2017 because we reconstructed the leaf ramp. So basically what that does is it has provisions where only certain times of the year we can process leaves. That's mid-October through early December. And it stipulates loose leaves only. And also the leaves can only stay on site for 24 hours before they have to be hauled away. And then they have to be hauled to an IEPA licensed compost facility, which I think there's, if you query their website, there's like 24 sites in Region 2, although I think there's only probably realistically 10 or 12 that could process the volume that we have. And over the last 15 years or so, we've probably used about, depending on our arrangements, maybe 5 or 6 different sites. So here's just a map of the Region 2, where it, the extent of it, and then this is from an older publication, but it has, you know, our facility denoted on it. And this is just for transfer stations. So the inspection and the monitoring is actually conducted by the Department of Environmental Control of Cook County. So they basically enforce our permit and they monitor us, and they come out typically 3 to 5 times unannounced every year, and they'll do like site inspections of the facility. This is like a sample report. And some of these pictures, actually, this was from several years ago, where this was before we had, you know, our improvements. So this is kind of an old facility there. But one thing that we have with our new facility is like all of our manholes, because we have a lot of leaf debris, we insert filter bags in them, you know, to prevent debris from getting in there. And then we just closely monitor those. Actually, we have them in there year round because our facilities kind of can get dirty, but we have them serviced and replaced on, you know, a routine basis. Obviously, at least weekly during leaves, and then monthly throughout the rest of the year. So preparations for leaves, leaf collection, that starts actually way up, you know, in the summer. It starts with just maintaining our all of our equipment. So for the village, we operate 10 leaf pushers for pickup trucks. So they inspect all the leaf brooms, and then they go through and service all the pickup trucks. We have the 10 leaf pans. We have 2 street sweepers, which are used as part of the program. We have 1 VACOL truck that services all the arterial streets. And then we have we utilize 2 wheel loaders for our loading operations. Here's just an example of one of our regenerative air sweeper that's in the bay getting serviced. And so the mechanics will go through everything meticulously, all of our equipment, and get it ready to go. One thing that they do is with the street sweepers, to accommodate like the leaf debris, they'll adjust like the brooms and stuff like that. You know, because they're going to be working with larger debris suction. So, and they'll make any other adjustments on the sweepers so it doesn't, so they can function and they're not, there's no hardship on them, that type of thing. Also, the big thing is we develop the leaf schedule that gets posted in our newsletter, website, e-news. So our schedule is, it's an 8-week program, 38 days, because we don't, you subtract out Thanksgiving the day after. 2nd week of October through the 1st week of December is usually how it works out, although there's been different little iterations throughout the years. We break the village into 5 geographic zones, and each zone throughout the 8 weeks gets actually 5 collections. And then we post all that on our, you know, newsletter, which you'll see, e-news website. And then we also talk about reminder of the program guidelines to residents. So here's last year's communicator, the fall winter edition. Here's the actual map of the different zones. Wilmette is 5 square miles. We're 5 miles east to west, 1 mile north to south. And then on our far east boundary is Lake Michigan. City of Evanston is our suburb to the south neighbor. So what you'll see here is last year's collection started on October 12th. You'll notice that first week we do single day zones. So we have to complete that whole area in 1 day. Typically the first week, what you'll see is in another chart is Mother Nature kind of goes all over the place. Sometimes we get an earlier drop, sometimes we get a later one, but typically the first week isn't like, it's not super heavy. Whereas like if we were to do 2 days off the bat, that'd be overkill. So we do single day zones the first week, and then starting the second week on the 19th, you'll see that we do 2 day zones. And the zones are all color coded. So then if you follow kind of the pattern, you can see how each zone gets the 5 collections. The 2 day zones are necessary because when it gets really heavy, it would, you know, based on our resource allocation, there's no way we could complete a zone in 1 day. So residents are instructed. There's also tips here, reminders per ordinance. They're not supposed to set out their leaves more than 48 hours in advance of their scheduled collection day. Neighborhood streets, they put them, they rake them out and place them along the curb lines, whereas the arterial streets, because of heavy traffic, they have to maintain their leaf piles on the parkway, and then those are collected with the backhaul, whereas neighborhood streets, they use the leaf pushers and packer trucks. And then our collection's not complete until the street sweepers come in and finish cleaning the street. The leaf pushers, they leave a little fine line of debris you'll see in a photo. So the sweepers really do the final cleaning. So on a 2-day zone, it's either we don't service the entire zone on both days. It's either they're gonna get a collection on the first day or the second day. So it's divided up. We also have reminders where when residents are raking their leaves out to the curb line that they are to avoid inlets. They have to maintain at least a 10-foot buffer. Otherwise, it contributes to like street flooding, stuff like that. Also, avoid placing any leaves on any public utility assets, light poles, hydrants, that type of thing. Also we have a curbside collection program where residents place out their toters. So we give them reminders also that, the toters can be placed within 4 feet of the curb. So we recommend that they don't place their toters right in the middle of a leaf pile, have them separated out, and they can either set them back a little bit or find a different open space on their parkway to set them for collection. So there's no issues. If there's flexibility on a 2-day zone where we can, alternate days where we avoid a refuse collection area, we will do that. And then we'll service that area on the second day to avoid the whole toter issue. And then as you'll see, it does extend into December, which sometimes we will have snow that comes into play, which you'll see. We also hire seasonal leaf collectors. We post that in the summer. We have 6 positions. They're utilized to help us install the leaf signs throughout town. Also, they operate the controls on the back of the packer trucks, and then we also use them to operate the boom or the hose on the backhaul truck as well. They start 1 week before the program, and then they continue 1 week after. The program also utilizes, depending on the demand, like 7 to 11 full-time employees also contribute to the program. So here are all the temporary signs that we have to install. Basically, they're 12 by 18 signs on coroplast blanks. The top portions are stenciled or screen printed, the no parking leaf pickup portion, and we reuse those every year. The bottom portion is actually like a label or decal, which we affix on there that has the actual dates for the zone. So of the 2,000 signs, there's probably approximately 400 of these that go up per zone, and each zone has its own set of dates. And then they're affixed to our winter precip signs, which are permanent out in the field. There's at least 1 or 2 of those on each street, and then we secure them with the 3M product, the dual lock Velcro tape, which works out really nicely. So then the seasonal employees will install these, and then afterwards they will take them down when the season concludes. So what do field operations look like? What is a normal day? We picked out a date last year. This was October 12th, or I'm sorry, October 12th is when it started, but this was the 16th, which I believe was week 6. It was the first day of a 2-day zone. We can see we're in zone 3. So we'll kind of go through that. What happens is like the packer truck order and the number of semis that we need, that would take place on the day before, which was Friday the 13th. The supervisors would coordinate that with the vendor. Currently, both of those operations, it's under our solid waste contract. It's included with that. Although in the past, we've had the hauling and disposal as a separate standalone contract, but currently that's all included in the solid waste. So we actually coordinate just with one vendor, which is Advanced Disposal, which I think is now Waste Management. So what happens is for this particular day, we had 4 crews with the leaf pushers and packer trucks. So they each get one of these maps, and what's denoted on there in the purple, that's the backhaul route. So the operators know that, but they're given instructions on a certain area that they highlight, which they're supposed to complete. So you have here on the left, you have truck 26 with, they assemble with a packer truck. Then you have truck 20, which they assemble with a packer, and all that stuff's denoted on the sheet. They keep track of all the loads that they fill, the date and time. One packer truck is 25 compacted cubic yards. So they fill out these sheets. Here's 2 others, truck 15, truck 20. You can see kind of how they're progressing through the zone. The operators will denote any issues that they come across for that day or any areas that were missed. They'll also communicate if there's issues with parked cars that are not in compliance. Also, the supervisors will put on here hot spots or issues that require special attention. A lot of time we have to pay special attention to like school zones, like arrival and departure. So a lot of times we'll push those really early in the morning and sweep them to get out of their way. If there's a street that's under like heavy construction, which does happen sometimes early in the LEAF program from the road program, where there's really no road there, we will actually issue them bags, all the residents' bags. The village will furnish those, and then we'll accommodate a bag collection, and that's where we wouldn't be able to get equipment to go down there. Also, you come across election days, polling locations, and we handle those, usually early in the morning. Or if it's, a 2-day collection, we'll either avoid that day and not even go in that area and then come back the next day, stuff like that. So it gives us some flexibility. So this day had 4 crews. The maximum we would have out is like 6 crews if during peak areas, time where it's of highest demand. And that would be our, max capacity of 6 crews out. These are just the maps, the follow-ups for the street sweepers. So the sweepers, they follow up behind where the pushers are going to collect, do the final cleanup and all the volume. And then the backhaul route has his there. The sweepers, they will actually dump on the street, and then that leaf debris gets collected with the packer trucks and incorporated with their volume reports, whereas the backhaul sometimes it'll dump on the street, and then also it will dump at the yard, which at the public works facility, which that volume is recorded as well. The sweepers, they move a little bit slower, obviously, than the pusher operation. So sometimes they'll have to work an extended day. Sometimes even they'll come in on weekends, and residents are really adamant. They like to see that finished product in the clean street when the sweeper finishes. So that's a really important thing. And again, we do the 5 collections throughout the 8 weeks. We do 5 sweepings, throughout the 8 weeks. So it's a lot of activity that has to get done. And then also we, the loaders, they will fill out a ticket every day for the number of loads that goes out. So there's a ticket, one of these filled out for each day. And then all that gets incorporated into our master sheet for the season, which has all the days, the volumes. It also has notes on vendor performance, issues, stuff of that matter. We also denote weather conditions for the day. If we get a lot of rain days, that's moisture content, and that can impact, just the number of truckloads that we need to haul out because of weight. So what does leaf collection look like? This is probably mid-season. This is on the east side. You can see that the leaves are starting to accumulate along the curb lines. Here's some other ones. This is at our southern boundary, and Ryan Field's in the background there. This is probably a little bit further along where the piles get a little bit bigger, as you can see as we're progressing. And then this is kind of how the leaf pushing operation works. You can see the pickup with the leaf broom attached and the pan affixed to the back of a packer truck. As it pushes in, then the pan gets operated. and they get deposited in the back of the Packer truck. So they go pile to pile. So this, they finish one pile and they're in transit to find another one. So just navigating to the piles, pushing, you can see just how the operation, that's what these photos are for. There's our seasonal employee operating the controls. So he's operating the up and down of the pan, which is secured with a winch, and it's also locked in with the ears on the back of the garbage truck. And then he also operates the blade. All of our seasonal employees, the refuse hauler, come out early in the year, and they'll do a one-day training session on all the controls with them. And then, of course, if they have any questions that come up, they can work with the operator of the truck. Then when the truck does fill up, they will disconnect and transport back to the public works facility to dump. And then when they come back, they'll rehook up again. While the refuse truck is gone, the pickup trucks will then create piles. So they'll push curb lines, push streets, and they'll create these piles. And that just kind of speeds it up. If it's really heavy, we'll have our 6 Packer trucks out, and then we'll actually throw out a couple more pickup truck operators. We call them pile makers, and they'll just work ahead of the crews and assemble piles for them just to keep them working efficiently. So this is just evidence of making piles. As they're working, the operators, these are door hangers. This is just kind of blown up, but if they notice any violations with debris that's not supposed to be in there, again, we're supposed to be collecting loose leaves only, they'll skip it, or if they can be kicked out of the pile, they will, and they'll leave the door hanger for the resident. The yard waste program still goes on, the regular one that the hauler does with the bags and twig bundles, stuff like that. That goes through all of November. So residents do have another outlet to get rid of that items. Here's another notice that with different language on it, and here's another one. But the village also has, with Swank, they have a pumpkin collection program where they have a dumpster, roll-off dumpster at the village hall for certain dates, and residents have an outlet that way also to get rid of like pumpkins, gourds, stuff like that. So we do provide alternatives. So this is what a street looks like after it's been pushed, and you can see the fine debris that's still on there. And that's where the sweepers come in, and they'll do the final cleanup. And there's just an example of one of the sweepers. Here's an example just of the VACOL dumping, or VACOL at the Public Works facility. Again, this is the old site before the improvements. And then here's a Packer truck emptying. And then once the leaves are deposited, then we operate the wheel loaders and coordinate the semi trucks. This is the old leaf ramp that you'll see that was conducted in-house, and then obviously it was all improved with all being concrete. And now we have the nice push wall there. So here's our wheel loaders in operation. The semis, typically we're looking at 90 to 100 yard capacity. This is where it gets a little bit more active. This isn't ideally where we would want the dumping to go on. We usually like it to stay in that one bin and just kind of carry out along that fence line in that area, that designated area. With improvements, we also were able to get rid of this light pole, bollard, and hydrant. We relocated that, so this is actually much more opened up, so we don't have to deal with that, which was kind of nice. So what kind of volumes are we looking at? Week 1 to week 8, usually week 6 and 7 are our heaviest. And Thanksgiving week is one of those weeks. Usually it's either 6 or 7 it falls on. We've been as low as 35 yards, a day, all the way up to 600 plus. So your 35 yards, you're looking at, that's one Packer truck crew. Whereas if you're over 600, it's, you got the full ensemble out there, the 6 Packer trucks. And then whatever's our high for a week, against week 6 and 7, we can get upwards of 2,500, 2,600 yards that we process. Again, this is compacted cubic yards. Loose yards, you would multiply that by 2. So, upwards of 5,000 loose yards. So quite a bit. And then what does our average year look like? We're doing about 9,000 compacted cubic yards, 169 semi-loads, or about 54 compacted cubic yards per semi, which that equates to about 2 garbage trucks, a little more than that. Although like this number can fluctuate down, we can average down in the 30s or as high as the 70s, depending on the moisture content. If it's real wet, you're not going to get, 54. It's going to be probably in the 30s or low 40s. Whereas if it's really dry, you can pack them all day, and it could be as high as in the 60s. So which zone do we collect the most leaves out of? And it's really the driver is the area. It's zones 4 and 5. As you'll see, they're just a little bit bigger than 1, 2, and 3. So the other zones were like at 1,500 yards when it's all said and done, whereas 4 and 5 are about 2,000. This is just a snapshot of no leaf season is alike. Ideally, we would want something nice and steady where our resources are not stressed. But sometimes you get years where you will have a slow drop and then it ramps up, or you might get a year where it's dumped. You might get dumped early. So these just kind of show each year relative to average. Anything that's near like 100% means that it's like on a steady average. So it just shows the natural swings. And kind of the last thing to touch on is the incidence of snow that last week in December, because it does happen. Usually 1 out of every 3 weeks are leaf seasons. So what we do is we monitor the weather. We try to work around the piles the best we can, because our hope is to leave them intact as much as possible so we can come back and get them. And then what we'll do is when we have breaks in the weather, we'll actually replace the brooms with regular snowplows, and we'll actually use those to displace the piles, and we'll still use the pans and the packer trucks, and that's how we get around that. And then obviously we take advantage of any breaks in the weather where we might get a thaw or temperatures above freezing. We'll keep sweeping and stuff like that. So like we've actually had programs where we've had it extend out, into January. And we've, made that work the best we can. Otherwise, if we don't, then it's problematic because it then falls on the residents, with the next yard waste collection program. They have to dispose of it on their own using the bag system, because we no longer have the leaf program. We can't operate the leaf program in spring, so it's susceptible to the yard waste collection program on the residents' end of it, or or when we do street sweeping, it gets disposed of as street sweeping debris when we start up, street sweeping operations in March. But our goal is when we end the program, we try to stay ahead as much as we can, because we know we're going to have requests to circle back, and we try to accommodate those the best we can without sacrificing the schedule. And then also, like during the last week, we have that mindset where we don't leave anybody behind, and we're always going to, we know it's going to be kind of a mad dash rush at the end to service everybody, but we accommodate that, and we do our best again to not leave anybody behind. So that is it. I know I went a little bit long, but that is it.
Okay. Well, thanks, Guy. And we do have a few questions, and obviously we are running a little short on time, but I'm going to try to paraphrase a few of the questions. Some of them are similar, so I think we can knock a couple out at once. The first question is, when the leaves are raked into the street, are they getting into the storm drains, or how good are the residents at keeping them away from the storm drains? And if they are getting in there, do you guys have a program for backing those out, the catch basins out after the collection?
Yeah, so like I was hitting on, well, number one is, do we get a lot of cooperation? Yes and no. But yeah, there's no question that the inlets and catch basins are getting debris loaded. I know the NPDES requirement, it's like 20% of the system, which for us is like 680 structures, but we actually clean more than that. We have a contractor that assists us with that, and we do it in-house as well. But I know Matt, our water sewer superintendent, we're cleaning, I think, more like 1,000 structures a year. So we are a tree community, and we have a lot of, not just leaf collect during leaves the fall, but in the spring you have a lot of tree debris load from the flowers and seeds and all that. So we just have to service our structures a lot more aggressively than maybe some other towns do. But yeah, we're cognizant of that, and that's just the reality of it.
Okay, and then the next couple of kind of questions. The leaves that are collected in the compost program, what does the village do with those?
Well, all the leaves that we collect and are hauled out, they have to go to a licensed compost facility. Mm-hmm. And that's part of our permit. And that's also tied in with the curbside yard waste program, where the refuse hauler will collect bags and process twig bundles and what have you. That also has to go to a licensed compost facility. For this year, or the last year, we've been utilizing Thielen Sand and Gravel up in northern Lake County. They're a licensed permitted facility. But like I said, over the years, we've used, I think, 5 or 6 different ones that are permitted.
Okay. And then do you guys encourage your residents to utilize their mowers to mulch their leaves prior to pickup or whole leaf? Are there any programs like that to encourage mower mulching?
We do touch on that a little bit, but for the most part, and I think a lot of it ties into, like, I know we're starting to get into more like composting, like homeowner use, but I know that kind of goes into different, we don't have ordinances in place for that. So kind of yes and no, although right now it's most residents, just because of the volume of the leaves, like they wouldn't be able to reasonably process it on some of their properties, that we we take it away for them.
Okay. And then for the hauling that you guys are doing, do you have an idea what that cost is for the village, specifically for the hauling off program?
Well, we have it. It was negotiated into our solid waste contract, but in the past, I think we were paying, it was like $13 to $15 a compacted yard. So that equates to roughly 125,000 or so.
Okay. Well, thank you. I think that wraps up most of our questions. There may be some that still float in or that weren't really covered in that, but I think I tried to paraphrase most of them.
Hey, Sarah, could I ask a question?
Hold on, Dan. Thank you.
Okay, sure.
We appreciate you, and we appreciate your time. And then if there are any other questions that haven't been answered, if we can do it at the end of the presentations, I would really appreciate it. And then with that, we're going to go to our final presentation set, and that'll be Dan Bounds and Jack Worsham from Baxter and Woodman, and they're going to cover vehicle equipment and washing. Dan, as we all know, if we've been tuning into this, has been presenting at quite a few of these, and so he's got a lot of good information to give us. He's the department lead for the environmental programs for Baxter and Woodman, and again, has a lot of good information as far as EPA compliance and PDS permitting. And Jack is an infrastructure engineer with Baxter and Woodman, and he graduated from Case Western Reserve University with a bachelor's and master's in civil engineering. And he works with Dan on the water, wastewater, and storm sewer projects, and also assists with MS4 compliance. And so with that, Jack and Dan.
Thank you, Sarah. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. So Jack and I are going to provide some best practices and pollution prevention tips for vehicle and equipment washing, something that you do at your public works facilities. And keeping a municipality running takes well-maintained equipment, and a big part of that maintenance is keeping it clean, keeping excess oil, grease, sediment buildup on the equipment so that it can operate properly. It also sets a really good example for your municipal operations, for your residents, keeping your equipment clean. And I'm always impressed with how municipal operations and managers and staff take pride in their equipment and do keep it clean and running well. But that cleaning that is essential for keeping it running can generate a lot of waste and pollution that comes off in that wash water. Not only is there the materials on the equipment that you're washing off that's going to come into that wash water, but there's also the detergents, solvents, any type of chemicals that you're using to do that cleaning that will be in that wash water that's going to come off during that washing operation. So some of the wastes or pollutants that can come off with that washing activity include sediment. And sediment in our environment can clog waterways, create turbid, unsightly conditions in our waters and create environmental issues. But what's not as well known is the amount of pollutants or compounds that can be adhered to that sediment. And there's been a lot of research done on the pollution adhered to sediment that's getting into our environment, where the sediment's just the vehicle taking other chemical compounds out into our environment, getting released from that sediment and building up over time and creating issues. So both the sediment and the hitchhikers on the sediment getting into the environment are issues. A big part of our washing operation is getting the oil and grease off of the vehicles, and oil and grease has a toxicity once it gets out in our stormwater runoff. And the second largest fish kill I ever responded to in the state was a petroleum release and the toxicity associated with that petroleum. So that's something we need to keep out of our waterways to keep our ecosystems healthy. And then chlorides during winter maintenance, we got to wash our vehicles to get the road salt off so that the chlorides in that salt isn't chewing up our equipment and really drastically reducing its service life. So when we're washing our vehicles to do that, the chlorides are coming off of that wash water and entering our local waterways, all of which are impaired for chloride concentrations. And you're probably well aware of the chloride reduction workshops that happen in our area targeted at best practices for reducing the amount of chlorides. So washing is a part of that. A little bit of paints and decor from our vehicles come off in the washing process, and those things will have a toxicity as well too after wash, and if those wash waters are not handled properly. And like I mentioned a second ago, the cleaning solutions we're using, the detergents we're using are present in that wash water discharge. You might have been wondering what the largest fish kill I've ever responded to was, since I said the second largest was petroleum related. The largest was detergent related. The biggest fish kill I've ever worked in Illinois was a detergent spill, and the acute toxicity associated with detergents in the environment, even though they might say environmentally friendly or biodegradable, at a large concentration with short-term slug into our local waterways, there's toxicity there. And then when we're washing our vehicles, we've got the miscellaneous trash and debris that comes out of cleaning out the equipment, or trash or debris that might be stuck within the sediment in the inner workings of the equipment that we're washing off. If that's not handled properly, it can run off with that wash water and create unsightly conditions and pollution problems too. So the MS4 permit in the state has some specific requirements for vehicle and equipment washing. The MS4 permit is issued to municipalities from Illinois EPA to prevent pollutant discharges to the maximum extent practicable into our local waterways, and provide the best management practices and requirements for protecting our local water quality from storm drain pollution discharges. And the permit says we need to minimize the discharge of pollutants from equipment and vehicle washing, wheel wash water, and other wash waters. and that wash water must be treated in a sediment basin or another way to control that to provide equivalent or better treatment prior to the discharge of that water to our storm drains. Some of the inspection requirements in the permit they don't specifically mention washing, but it's just part of inspecting your overall facilities, your overall operations, taking a look at your wash bays and wash areas as well to make sure best management practices are being implemented and the storm drains in those areas aren't being impacted by wash water and the pollutants within that. So speaking of those facility inspections, just make it a part of your routine facility and evaluation. First, we're going to go through, Jack and I are going to go through BMPs related to your facilities and your washing areas. And then we're going to go through BMPs for your washing operations, the actual activity of washing. So of the different wash areas at your facilities, inspect those areas for leaks and any kind of non-stormwater discharges like you can see in the photos below. Look at your water service lines, water service pipe fittings, hoses and connections, the storm drain inlets near those washing areas. Look for any material buildup, remove that material, clean out those inlets, and clean up the area around those as well. When IEPA is doing MS4 program audits in our area, they always want to take a look at your public works yard and your facilities, and they always want to take a look at where you're doing vehicle washing and cleaning. So looking at the inlets and keeping those clean in those areas. It's a great idea. Probably the best management practice for vehicle and equipment washing is to do that in a wash bay that's connected to sanitary service. Doing your washing indoors keeps that wash water from getting to any sort of storm drain and connected to sanitary so that that wash water can properly be treated before getting out into our local waters. Most of the wash bays we see in this area are enclosed. They're inside. They've got a building roof cover and have plumbing permitted for a triple basin connected to sanitary to treat that water before it goes into the sanitary sewer. The triple basin is not an install and it's a done prevention device. It needs regular maintenance. So hopefully if you've got a triple basin on your wash bay, you do have a regular maintenance schedule to have that surface serviced and cleaned out. And like I said, again, minimize the washing outdoors if possible, but it is allowed by the permit in certain situations. Some facilities I've been to have good signage identifying where the washing areas are and washing facilities so that staff or others using the facility know where they are. It's always a good idea to positively identify where's a wash area, where is not a wash area associated to the different drains that you might have around your facility. Some could be connected to sanitary, some may not be. Staff need to know where washing should occur, where it should not occur. And sometimes signs are posted with any sort of washing prohibitions like no degreasing or engine cleaning or things like that for certain wash areas. And I've seen some yards have special signage for the proper equipment usage if there's specialized equipment or procedures for washing in those areas. Just a general housekeeping BMP, you want to control the trash and debris around your washing areas. Pick it up, sweep it up. It is going to be there after washing different vehicles. Providing a trash container in your wash areas is one of the best BMPs for controlling the trash, because if there's not a convenient place to put it when folks are washing equipment, it's just going to sit on the ground or it might not be picked up. And make sure your washing areas are part of your routine sweeping and trash control and disposal operations at your facility. So switching to operational BMPs, sometimes washing outside may be necessary. Maybe your equipment is too large to get in your wash bay, or you need to raise something up that the wash bay ceiling won't allow for. It's okay. You can wash it outside. Just make sure you designate an area for doing that away from storm drain inlets so that wash water is not getting into an inlet. If possible, direct it to a sanitary drain or boom it, contain it so you can vacuum it up and get it to sanitary. Use as little water as possible to minimize the amount of discharge that could get into a storm drain and prevent the sediment and other pollutants from entering that drain inlet. And then don't let it sit there and dry up and cake up on the pavement. Immediately sweep up, clean up that exterior wash area and properly dispose of the sediments and other debris that you've cleaned off. Sometimes our equipment gets into some pretty heavy duty action and it comes back with a lot of material caked on. And if I was the manager of the wash rack area, I would not want it going directly in there. So I see staff knock off really heavy accumulation material on equipment with a broom, shovel, hose outdoors before bringing it into the wash rack so that the drains and operation of the wash rack just don't get clogged up and cause problems. And again, if you're doing that, immediately sweep up and clean up your removed area, prevent that water from getting into a drain inlet. And if you're using water to pre-wash, try to minimize the amount that you're using to do that pre-wash before getting that heavily soiled accumulated equipment into your wash rack or wash bay. So regarding steam cleaning, we have to do this to prevent excessive grease, oil buildup on engines and pieces of the equipment. This should really only be done in a facility that is connected to sanitary. Hot pressure, hot water steam, removing that oil and grease at a more excessive level than a general wash. So that needs to really go to sanitary. And Jack, I'll let you take over for the next few slides.
All right. So in the event that you are not, that you don't have access to a wash bay and you are not able to do any washing outside, it might be necessary to transport vehicles somewhere off-site. In this case, best bet is going to be the nearest car wash because they're going to be connected to a sanitary service and they have all sorts of things that they need to comply with to make sure that they're not creating an illicit discharge. So they can handle that if it's not feasible at the facility. You know, the next slide. If you are doing this at the facility, you want to make sure that the detergents you're using in the unlikely event that this gets released is not going to negatively impact natural waters as much as possible. So the main features to look for there are that it's biodegradable, so it doesn't stay in the natural environment forever. And also importantly that it's phosphate free because phosphates can cause all sorts of problems with algae blooms and killing off aquatic life. So phosphate-free detergents are going to be superior for vehicle washing. As far as equipment goes, hoses that have automatic nozzles that switch off when they're not being used should be utilized. So that way, if somebody forgets that hose is on or they have to go do something else, you avoid flooding of a wash bay and potentially overflowing into a storm sewer, and you save water. There's no waste there. Just like anything else for the detergent and the solvents that you're going to be using for these operations, proper storage is required. So these should all be stored far away from any storm drain inlets. They should all be properly labeled. The proper amount of them should be stored. And when you do go out to wash your vehicles, make sure you're not taking any more than you need so that if there is a problem, there isn't a ton of excess material involved in a spill. If there is a spill, similar to what Pat was talking about at the beginning of this, have a spill kit near the washing area, whether that's in the wash bay or somewhere outside, to utilize in the event of a wash water spill or a detergent or cleaning chemical. And always make sure after you use the spill kit material for cleaning this up that you replenish the supply so you don't end up in a situation where you have a spill and you're running low. And then just like everything else, regular training is required for something like this. First on the importance of preventing this pollution, both as far as protecting the natural water bodies and also complying with MS4. And then everything that we've talked about up to this point, equipment, operations within the wash bay, those proper cleaning procedures to make sure that you don't have any discharges, making sure that this is all being done in the correct place, and that with the materials that you're using for cleaning, that those are the right types of materials, and also that their use and disposal and mitigation, if there is a spill, is handled correctly. So regular refresher courses should be conducted for this. And I'll hand it back over to Dan to conclude.
All right, thanks, Jack. Yeah, so those are the basics, what we've seen as good practices for washing facilities, washing operations to keep our equipment looking good. Just in wrap up here, consider local quality when you're performing your vehicle and equipment washing activities. Our programs are aimed at pollution prevention and keeping the recreational use and local environmental quality of our local waters the best we can in performing our municipal operations. Take care when you're using the detergents and cleaning solvents and handling the waste from the washing activities. Like I mentioned before, I've seen some pretty significant environmental issues created by detergents and solvents. And know the proper way to safely dispose or recycle of any of the excess chemicals, detergents that you have that you're not going to use for your facility anymore. Definitely don't want to put those into a storm drain. And sometimes dumping those type of cleaning solvents, chemicals isn't going to be allowed by the local sanitary service provider. Like Jack mentioned, spill kits are super important here. Whenever you've got a spill or release from your washing activities or the chemicals that you're using, know where that spill kit is. Know the information sheets for the chemicals that you're using and how to properly clean up and quickly address those spills. And lastly, just prevent any sort of liquid, wash water or cleaning material to your storm drains at your facilities where you're doing your washing activities. And just for fun, while we were doing our research for the best practices for vehicle and equipment washing right now, we came across Scott Wade's artistic work with dirty vehicles. I had never seen these up until this point, but these two images here are just the tip of the iceberg that Mr. Wade has produced on dirty vehicle windows. And the website of his art gallery shows, and other amazing pieces of window artwork is at dirtycarart.com. There's some amazing stuff there. With that, Jack and I will be happy to take any questions you have regarding vehicle and equipment washing and best management practices.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, it's that's interesting with dirty Carhartt. That's more than I think we usually see as we're driving down the road. And I guess we don't get that much here, but maybe some areas that have more gravel roads. I don't see any questions in the chat box specifically for Dan and Jack. But Guy, there were a couple questions we didn't cover with you. If you're still on and have the opportunity to answer, and or if anybody has any questions for Pat or Dan or anybody, just throw them in the chat box and maybe our panel can go through them. The question for Guy, sorry, I have to get back to it. Do you guys have any estimates? Have you guys done any program estimates on the nutrient load reduction from your massive collection program?
No, we have not, but that's a very good question. That's interesting. But no, we have not.
Yeah, then I know we've done some of that with different things that we've done here at the county, and it's even just theoretical reductions, and it's pretty amazing. And I'm sure you guys would have the same kind of metrics and numbers when you went through it. Okay, so if there are no more questions, again, I appreciate everyone being here. You will get an email from Mary Mitros with a link to all the presentations, as well as a PDH certificate. And we appreciate everyone being on this and learning more about pollution prevention. It's important, as I said at the beginning, to all of our community to kind of refocus and improve on water quality by changing our habits and what we do. And I want to give a special thanks to Pat and Guy for joining us today. This virtual format definitely allows us a broader reach, and it's great because we do get to get people from out of the area coming in to speak to us. So we really appreciate it from DuPage County. And with that, have a great day.